It had been a normal day at the Teachers' Centre. At 5:15 I was ready to go home. I phoned John to say that I was leaving. That was his signal to put the vegetables on. I drove normally along the road to Weedon, and there above the road in front of me was this dumbbell-shaped object. It was grey, smooth, plasticky looking. I assumed that the traffic coming towards me would be seeing it, but I didn't see anybody looking up at it at all. I turned into the village, and instead of going faster as I expected, the car was slowing down. Suddenly, everywhere went black. As I wondered where I was, a circle of brilliant white light suddenly shone on the road. I sat there wondering where these lights could have come from. I said, "Good gracious," out loud, and suddenly normal daylight had reappeared. I was driving the car normally about 30 yards further down the road, and I drove home. And I said to John, "I'm just going to look out of the window to see if I can see anything, and then I'll tell you something that you won't believe."
Every day, someone somewhere reports something strange in the sky. Almost all sightings are later identified, and no UFO has ever been confirmed as an alien spacecraft. But could alien life exist? And where might we find it? Astronomy isn't just for experts. You don't have to have a telescope.
All you need to look at the night sky is a pair of eyes and a fairly good, clear, dark sight, somewhere where there are not many streetlights around and not very many tall buildings or trees to block the horizon. Then you use the bright stars to point your way to the much smaller stars.
This is Orion, the Hunter, one of the groups of stars which seem to form a shape in our night sky. The star groups are called constellations, but if we could travel to them, we would see how the stars lie at vast distances from one another.
You can see about 2,000 stars on a very, very dark night. Once you get to know the patterns of stars in the night sky, you'll probably notice that there are some what appear to be incredibly bright stars that seem to move around over the course of a few months. And these are in fact the planets.
Unlike the planets, the Sun is a star. It generates heat and light, like all stars, and the planets just circle round it in orbit. The planets only seem bright because they reflect light from the Sun. Close in with Earth are 3 other solid rocky worlds. Then come 4 planets like Uranus, mostly giant balls of gas, nothing like our home. Beyond the gassy worlds is one last rocky planet, Pluto, marking the far edge of the solar system. It's so dim and distant that even the Hubble Space Telescope cannot make out its features clearly. If we could stand on Pluto, the Sun would be little more than a brilliant light in the sky. Without strong sunlight, Pluto is frozen, more than 200 degrees below zero. Alien life in the solar system would have to be closer in.
The Earth just happens to be the right distance from the Sun so that water can exist frozen, but also as a liquid and as a vapor. That can't happen anywhere else that we know of in the solar system, and we need that for life. Planet Venus, which is closest to the Earth, is just too close to the Sun. It's very, very hot.
But beneath its clouds, Venus is nearly the same size as Earth, almost a twin planet to our world. Spacecraft have used radar to create maps of the surface. This computer-generated flight is based on real data. Images like this have shown that Venus is much like our Earth, though the hills and valleys are far smaller. But the surface is strangely new compared to our world. And Venus has a weird, slow, backwards rotation on its axis that makes a Venusian day longer than a Venusian year. All this suggests that Venus was never home to alien life. Today it's a hostile place, hot enough to melt lead, let alone a human body. Mars looks much more promising. This movie was made using pictures from the Hubble Space Telescope.
Looking at photographs of Mars, it looks like a very long time ago that water might have flowed there. We see canyons and we see very dried up riverbeds. So we think that there was water on Mars at some point. So very, very possibly deep down in the soil, there might be some kind of bacteria or microbes.
Could these be fossilized alien bacteria? They were found in a rock that came from Mars. If the scientists are right, the fossils could be related to bacteria called slimes, which have recently been discovered on Earth. Slimes can live without heat or light in rocks deep underground. It seems that even on our planet, life can be every bit as alien as science fiction.
There's no reason why aliens would have to even look like us. For example, you could have an alien that looked like a rock on the outside, but perhaps had some living organism on the inside, or an alien that was like a giant worm, similar to the sorts of things that we find living down by volcanoes on the bottom of the sea.
Until submarines took pictures like these, no one believed life could exist this deep underwater. Foul chemicals at 400 Celsius spew from vents in the sea floor. But some bacteria can digest the chemicals, and in turn they feed other creatures. This may be where life began on Earth. The only other place like it is a moon of Jupiter. Europa may well have oceans as big as Earth's, but we won't know for sure until space probes visit it. Saturn has 20 moons. Titan is the biggest and the last hope for alien life nearby. Titan has a nitrogen-based atmosphere, something like the early Earth, but it's very, very cold. One day Titan might spring to life, but for the moment it's in deep freeze. Simple creatures like alien worms might just be our neighbors in space. But intelligent alien visitors would have to have traveled from far beyond our solar system. It's likely that humans will travel to Mars soon, but the journey will take more than 6 months. Getting to Pluto could take 20 years. Beyond Pluto, there's virtually nothing for a very long way. Even light from our sun takes 4.5 years to get to the nearest star, Proxima Centauri. It's part of a multi-star system, like most stars. Looking back from Proxima Centauri, the view would seem almost the same as from Earth, but with our sun as an extra point in the W-shaped constellation we call Cassiopeia. Just another star in the sky.
What makes the universe very strange compared to everyday experience in many ways is that its size, its time and its physical conditions. The universe is huge and extremely old, which means there's been 10 billion years for things to happen.
Our sun is one in 100,000 million stars that make up our local star city. Together they're called the Milky Way galaxy, and if we could travel up above it, we would see its spiral shape, a billion kilometers across. The sun is about 2/3 out from the center. Beyond the Milky Way are even greater realms of empty space between ours and other galaxies. There are as many galaxies as there are grains of sand on a beach, but not an infinite number. The universe has no real edge, but it is a definite size.
To cross the universe at the speed of light, I think, is like making a train journey from Glasgow to London on a train that is travelling something like 1 millimetre per century, which makes even privatised British Rail seem pretty fast. So if you set off from Glasgow to London and after a century you've travelled 1 millimetre, that kind of rate of progress would take you to London in the same time as you would cross the universe travelling at the speed of light, which is 300,000 kilometres every second. Even then, though, I mean, who can imagine a train journey to London at a millimetre per century? The numbers are just so vast, very difficult to get your head around them.
This is a real photograph of 20 billion stars. Among them, astronomers have found clues that suggest some may well have planets. The evidence forms part of a theory which describes how the universe and our solar system came into being.
The further you go back in time in the universe, the further we get away from the physics of every day. And the most extreme example is when you go right back to what people think of as the beginning.
Science cannot say what there was before the universe began, only that there was nothing. No space, no time. And without time, words like before and after lose their meaning. Time and space began with a Big Bang, but the early universe was nothing like what we know today. For hundreds of thousands of years, the temperature was so high that even atoms could not exist. The particles that would go on to make them seethed in a fiery state called a plasma. All the matter in the universe began an explosion outwards that continues to this day. Even now, space itself is still stretching.
The Big Bang is probably the most extreme example of things that, or the many things in astrophysics that I don't understand. You know, people seem to think you're in some eminent position in astronomy, therefore you know everything about astronomy, but far from it. It's impossible for me to grasp this sudden moment when, following nothing, at which all of a sudden there was this intensely dense, intensely hot point expanding rapidly outwards. From that point onwards, I can sort of grasp some of what is alleged to have happened, but what it means in terms of our concepts of space and time, I simply don't know.
Eventually, the universe cooled down to a few thousand Celsius. Atoms began to form, and virtually all the universe existed as a gas, hydrogen. But the Big Bang was uneven, and in places gravity began pulling the gas together. Over the next billion years, so much hydrogen gathered in some regions that conditions were right for a nuclear reaction, and the first stars began to shine. However strange astronomers' theories may sound, they are based on real observations.
I think there's a misconception that science is trying to discover the truth, and personally I don't think there is such a thing as the truth in the realms of science. Science is a way of describing the universe rather than explaining it. It's a description which we try to make as simple as possible as we move on, of how things happen. You stick your neck out, you say, my theory is this, and you make predictions from it, and if those predictions are wrong, then you have to give up.
Testing theories needs evidence from stars and galaxies of all ages. Luckily, the fixed speed of light makes that easy. Light travelling from objects near to us gets here sooner than light travelling from objects in the distance. A snapshot of the sky shows stars close to us when the light left them, maybe only 10 years ago. But in the same picture, very distant galaxies show up as they were when the light left them, millions of years ago. So a single image like this tells a story that stretches way back across time. The first giant stars only lasted a few million years before they exploded, seeding space with dust. This real picture shows the Eagle Nebula. It's a gigantic cloud of cosmic dust. It is lit from behind by the light from hot stars. In the dark, bubbly clouds, astronomers believe that stars and planetary systems are being born. Our solar system would fit in the tip of this dark finger. Indeed, it formed in a place very like this. Over billions of years, gravity pulled the dust together in a spinning disk around the early sun. Lighter material spun off to the edge and went on to form the giant gassy planets. Nearer the center, the rocky worlds like Earth took shape. Because it formed by recycling the ashes of earlier stars, everything in the solar system is second-hand. Our sun, our Earth, even our own bodies are made from the dust of dying stars.
It's astonishing. Whenever I say that, I find myself disbelieving it. I mean, it seems more fantastic than many of the more extreme religious belief systems that are around. But the only thing that makes it a little bit more palatable and comprehensible as a plausible theory is the fact that the universe is so old. I mean, this stuff has 1 billion years to spread out. Mountains get worn down by winds and water in 1 million years, so given time, it is amazing the things that can happen.
In time, like all stars, our sun will also run out of nuclear fuel. It will swell up and engulf the inner planets, possibly including Earth. More massive stars explode to be recycled once again, but our star will end its life as a tiny, dark ball of ash. If human life still exists, then will be the time for us to become the aliens and move on to other worlds.
I think it is likely that with all the stars in the universe, that around one of them there must be a planet that has conditions that are suitable for life. Whether or not they are close enough for us to ever meet, who knows?
Personally, I would be astonished if there weren't intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. It is puzzling that if life is common, why is it not easier to find? You might have thought that the first radio telescopes to look for signals from other stars would immediately have found them, and yet we haven't. So it's a very sobering thought, but the first episode of Coronation Street, the signals from that have gone out to a distance such that thousands of stars could have received them if there were intelligent people. But maybe that's why they haven't bothered to come and look, because Coronation Street was too much for them. I don't know.
To me, the whole thing was not frightening in any way. I know now that people do think that UFOs are frightening, but my experience wasn't in any way at all. I've always thought of it as a very friendly experience.